Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, Margaret.
Okay, are we set to go?
We are. So go ahead.
Okay, great. Ken, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and your story about hearing loss?
Well, my name is Ken Hobbins. Just a little bit about my background. When I was 22, I had a malignant brain tumor. And as a result of the radiation directly to my head, I eventually lost my hearing, developed a severe to profound hearing loss because the radiation burned the nerves from my outer ear to my brain. That was a number of years ago. My hearing loss, though, didn't really start occurring until about 10 years after I had my cancer. So no one can explain to me why the delay, why it didn't happen right away. But I survived it, and I am here today, and I'm working as a counselor.
Okay, great.
Are you thinking about stuff over your shoulder?
When you
No.
when did you get your hearing aids then? And then you also use other assistive technology. How was it getting? You guys
Go
set?
ahead. Go
Okay.
ahead. We won't screw you up.
Okay, you are screaming. When did you get your hearing aids, and was it difficult to get used to using them?
Oh, it was extremely difficult. It's like,
Okay.
Get started.
Yep. Can you say when I got my hearing aids, it was extremely difficult to get used to them?
sure.
Okay, great.
When I got my hearing aids, it was extremely difficult getting used to them. Putting them on I couldn't figure out how to even get them in my ear. But like anything, once you do it after a while, it just became second nature.
And I noticed you wearing a loop. What can you tell me about how that helps you?
Certainly, this is it's called an FM system, but it really works when I'm in meetings with a lot of people. I have different levels or zones that I can press into based on hearing, like directly you, as opposed to other people in the room. And it assists me greatly when I'm in meeting with people.
Do you use other technology as well?
Yes, I also have another device that is somewhat similar to this, but it's designed for just one-on-one. As a counselor, I'm meeting privately with consumers, and it helps me hear everything that I need to hear in my business. I will also give my consumers permission to double check with me and say, no, Ken, that isn't what I said, this is what I said. So I give them permission right away to identify if I misunderstood them. I also paraphrase throughout the discussion my understanding to make sure that I'm on the right track.
You can't hear it.
Great. Can you describe how it felt when you realized that you were losing your hearing?
Well, I think from my wife's perspective, she basically mourned it at first more than I did, because she's with me all the time, and she noticed that she'd have to repeat and repeat and repeat. And I think for anyone who's hearing impaired, it's the person that's closest to them that's probably going to get frustrated first. I, like most things in my life, I just get used to it and deal with it, move forward. There's nothing I can do. I can't feel sorry for myself. I still have to work. I have to pick myself up and move forward. So I don't know that I really mourned it as much as maybe people that I see a lot, people around me. It required people that know me best to walk on my good side so I could hear them, or if I'm with other people, I will move and get on my good side so I can hear as much as I can hear. But for me, it really didn't, I suppose it did affect me, but it's been so long I don't even remember.
Okay.
Did you want to get him saying, the first thing he said was, my wife mourned more than I did,
Mhm.
but there was no real setup to that as far as, when I first lost my hearing, or do you feel you have that?
I think we can do it because we'll have a section called grieving the hearing loss.
Yeah, there's a setup.
Yeah,
Perfect.
so I think we're good.
Thank you.
Now, do you have, I shouldn't ask the question when you're not looking at me. Do you have tinnitus at all, or is it more of a, can you describe your buzz?
No, I don't. I know many of my former
Please
clients.
start again. It was a little.
Okay. Can you describe your hearing loss for me?
Yes, I have a severe to profound hearing loss. I hear at about 40 decibels. This used to be my good hearing ear, and I was at about 80% of the good hearing level. Then over the years, this hearing dropped. This was my phone ear. And so what I had to do is start using this ear and learn to use the phone on my left side, your right side or left side. And I just learned how to adapt to it. But my hearing loss affects me in most conversations with people or with maybe on a one-on-one. It's very difficult when I'm in a room with a lot of people. If I go to like a staff meeting or an event, I almost need to pull the person out of the room. Or if I'm in a training opportunity where we have to break out in small groups, my group will always have to go outside of the meeting room so I can hear them. And this helps me greatly. Medulloblastoma was the name of my tumor, and from what I was told at the time, it was very popular in children, and the survival rate was not very high. And I would ask, well, then why am I still around? And people would say maybe because I was a little older when I had the tumor, and maybe that is why, but no one can tell you exactly why I'm still here.
What's making that noise?
Something right over here.
No fire?
No.
Josh? Okay, let's go.
It was good, or thing that we were talking about?
Okay, now kind of move it a little bit, or move your hands around. Okay, now spin it over, face it at me.
Oh, that's great.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Good.
cough.
Now set it on you, right straight
I
back.
didn't hear that.
And then
I heard,
bring it out and show me again. Okay, so keep it on you.
Oh,
Okay, now bring it out and show me.
That's what I heard too.
Perfect. Now, one time you held it up like this, right over there. You said, this helps me a lot. So hold it up over there. Yep. And face it at me. Yep, perfect, just like that. So here's a couple little things for you, Peter.
great, thank you.
You can use them or not, whatever you desire. Then just move it just a little bit. Yep, just so it looks realistic. Perfect, thank you.
So,
But I would have appreciated it if you'd done it when the client was still here, then, it would be even better.
Right.
but-
But we could have it on tape, that's good too.
Well, that's true. All right, let me know when it's time to go.
Another question might be, what in your job, what kind of accommodations?
Okay,
Because that's a big deal.
okay, perfect. All right.
Yep.
So, you mentioned a little bit about how hearing loss has affected your ability to communicate with your wife and how she was the first person to notice. How does it affect your ability to communicate with others?
Well, it depends on the situation, certainly. When I'm meeting with my clients,
You want to paraphrase that?
I will have my,
You start over and paraphrase it a little more.
And say,
Mark, if you could help.
When I use it, however you said it,
Okay.
when I notice it the most or whatever it was.
yeah, they want you to do paraphrase at the beginning, paraphrase my question about, so something about, it's the ability to communicate with others, or my ability to communicate with others can be difficult, you know, in either this situation or when these things are happening. Okay?
so you're going to ask me again?
Yep, I
Okay.
will. Okay, how has hearing loss affected your ability to communicate with others?
Considerably. When I'm in a one-on-one situation, I will have my assisted listening device on. I will explain to the consumer that I have this on because of my hearing loss. I have an actual script that I use for any consumer that are coming into me with me, and I will talk about my hearing loss. I will tell them, I will give them permission basically to repeat if I feel they need to. So, you know, there's one fallacy out there about people that have hearing loss. General population sometimes think, oh, he's got hearing aids, so he can hear just like me. And that is such a fallacy. All these fancy devices do is amplify sound. That's all they do. They make it a little easier. But even with a super device as this, they still just amplify sound. So it can be difficult in meeting in a group. It can be difficult meeting with an individual if a person has a very low tone voice. So even if I have my amplifier on as well as the person, but if they talk like this, I can't hear them. And I have to ask them to speak louder. And finally, halfway through the interview, they will understand what my need is and will then accommodate me. But so groups is definitely more, for a person who's hard of hearing, meeting in groups is much more difficult than meeting on a one-on-one situation. But as a counselor, I have to be able to hear as much as possible because I'm going to be working with that consumer and directing them into employment. So it's vital that I hear everything or almost everything so I can help that client move forward, if that answers your question.
You want to get the paraphrase now, in a nutshell?
Actually, I think when he it's fine.
Okay.
He said certainly, and then he said when. So I think we're good.
Perfect.
I was listening specifically
Yep.
for that. So you mentioned about accommodations. How did you ask for accommodations at work, and why is it so important for people to be able to ask for accommodations?
Like anybody who has a disability, oftentimes our accommodations are necessary. When I moved to my last office, I received an accommodation of a corner office that was tucked kind of back away from all the activity. It was quieter for me. I received this as an accommodation to aid me in my hearing ability. It's very important to have accommodations to do your work, and without some of these devices, I couldn't do my job. And under some of the disability acts, companies of 50 employers or more are required to provide accommodations as long as it isn't a financial burden for them. So without accommodations, I couldn't do my job.
All right. You're answering all my questions without me having to ask them. How do you feel when people don't understand what you're saying, or you're not understanding what they're saying? Do you get frustrated, or is it just you know,
I will
their
give you
tricks?
a case in point. I also have a second job, and I work for a large department store company, and I've worked there for 19 years. And this is when I'm behind the counter with a terminal, and the consumer is purchasing something. And I have noticed over the years that I may not hear them, or I think I hear. And sometimes customers get frustrated and say, well, I already said that, Ken. Or I notice I'm a little slower on my keyboard. Just about 2 weeks ago, I was working there, and I was making a couple mistakes. And the consumer became so frustrated. He said, "Do you want me to come around and do it?" And walked away. So sometimes people are very patient when it comes to working with someone with a hearing loss. Some people don't understand it, and some people get frustrated with it. But I encounter that every time I meet with a customer, whether in my regular job or in my part-time job.
So how do you handle that then? With when that happens, what are the things that you do to either educate them or to keep yourself from, you know, I know my personality would be to get a little snippy. But
Well, what I will do is immediately apologize. I might not feel like apologizing, but being good at customer service, I would apologize and thank them for their patience and support. And, 99% of the people are going to say, oh, no problem, Ken. But there's always that percentage of people that are frustrated, might want somebody else to wait on them. And certainly we would do that if a consumer or customer was frustrated. So it's a big part of it is not understanding about what a person goes through with a hearing loss. And I think that's where the public really needs to be educated.
okay.
Gotta keep your wing down there, Margaret.
Sorry. This chair's too big for me. Let's see. So how much do you typically share with people about your hearing loss? I mean, obviously you wear hearing aids, so, if they observe those, they recognize that you have a hearing loss. But do you try to educate them as to the degree of hearing loss, or?
I think I can answer that twofold. When I am working my regular job as a counselor, I will educate them to a point so they understand where I'm at in my situation. But when I'm working in my part-time job, it's very interesting because sometimes people will see me and notice my hearing aids, and they'll say, "Where'd you get those hearing aids? I have these hearing aids," and then we can have a really nice conversation. I know minimal signing, so when I have a deaf client, about all I remember is thank you. But I can connect pretty well with a deaf client, and because my colleagues in my part-time job don't have a clue. So, did I answer your question?
You did.
Okay.
You did. Okay, so when you lost your hearing, how did that affect you in terms of your identity? Did you feel like you had lost an important part of who you were, or was it replaced by, hey, that DEAF is better than DEAD?
I am the type of person that deals with situations and move forward. I'm not the type of person to feel sorry for myself. Oh, woe is me, I have a hearing loss. I'm more the type of person that identifies the issue, gets the appropriate accommodation, and moves forward. So I may have mourned the loss of my hearing at one point or another, but I feel more sad about the people that are closest to me and have to work harder to hear me. My wife can get very frustrated with me, and I can understand why. I do sometimes use this device when I'm in the car with her. She will drive because this is my best hearing side. I will sit on the passenger side, and generally we can amplify the conversation a bit. But then with cars and trucks around you, sometimes that's even difficult. But no, I'm the type of person just moves forward and says, okay, this is what we have to deal with. Let's get the accommodations and move forward.
Okay.
That's how I've always been.
What do you miss most about hearing?
I'm a very visual person.
Were you before?
For example, when I go out to the Arboretum in Chaska, I identify with colors and trees and shrubs, and I do when I'm by myself and I'm in a quiet space. I can hear the birds chirping and the squirrels eating their nuts and things. So I really do hear those kinds of things. And if I'm in a loud area, I will go to a quieter one. And again, that's me accommodating myself. So I do hear some of those things that you wouldn't think a person with a hearing loss hears. But I do hear it on my own terms.
If you were, no, I forgot what I was going to ask, and it was really a good question. Let's see.
And Margaret, just be a little cautious about stepping
It's
out.
kind of like
I know, I was
stump the band. Or,
Yeah. Stump the interviewer.
Margaret, how much, any mental health, have you gotten to any?
They were
mental-
just getting into
Okay,
that.
thank you.
This course is designed for mental health practitioners that are working with people with hearing loss. What are some of the things that you would want these practitioners to be aware of in dealing with people with some degree of hearing loss?
Could you rephrase that?
Sure. People, what are some things you would like mental health practitioners to know about people, the experiences of people with hearing loss, so that they can serve them more effectively?
Well, there are many organizations out there right now that, for example, if I'm going to a workshop or a seminar, they will have on the bottom, if you need accommodations or if you have a hearing loss, please let us know ahead of time. So they might give me preferential seating. They might make sure that I am right in front of the presenter. And even in areas where that is not acknowledged, I always sit in the front row. I'm always positioned where I can hear the speaker in the best situation. I will always have this with me, but even when I don't, if I position myself and get close enough, I'm not an avid lip reader, but I've been through enough lip reading training that between this and reading lips and being in front, I do pretty well.
Okay. From an emotional standpoint, one of the things that the people with hearing loss often see a mental health practitioner for things like communications with their spouse or with family members, and how, are there things that you think mental health practitioners would benefit from your experience in terms of helping their clients in turn improve those communications with their family members, friends?
Well, for many years I worked with the deaf and hard of hearing, and in a former situation, and I think each organization has to look at that. I think each organization needs to be more aware of deaf and hard of hearing people and how to accommodate them. I can tell you a story. When I was moving into a new office, um, all the employees were being moved from offices to cubes. And I would say to some of my colleagues, well, that's not going to work for me, because a cube, you can hear everyone talking around you. You can, hear people drinking, having conversation. And so I went to my boss and asked for an accommodation. He said, everyone is moving into cubicles. A little further into it, as we're getting, because they were building this office, and I knew I had to get my request in sooner than later. And I did. I went to him again, and I said, I need an office. Not because of who I am and what I do, but because it would help me to hear better. And I got a similar response. So I was able to talk to someone who provided accommodations at my company. She came and saw my situation, and I got my office. The other thing that I just wanted to share, another accommodation that I can add to your question before, is I have a special telephone. There are many kinds of amplified telephones out there, but I have one that has a screen where it'll provide the text of what a person is saying. It's always a little delayed from the time the person is speaking with me, and I will oftentimes say, hold on a minute, and then the text will show what the person said, and I can then give a more appropriate response to, wait, I can't hear you. There's an area within the state that does provide various types of amplified devices on a loan situation. And that's how I found out about that kind of an accommodation.
Okay. So why do you think, it sounds as though you have very well-developed self-advocacy skills. Why do you think it's important for people with hearing loss to learn how to advocate for their needs in a situation and do it in a way that doesn't sound like they're asking, for preferential treatment? Like, I want an office because I am so special. I need this to hear. So how do you, when you were working with hard of hearing clients, how did you help them develop that ability to ask for an accommodation?
Well, basically what I would do is I would show them my phone right in my office so they could actually see. I could show them this. I could basically talk about, unless they advocate for themselves, they're going to be in the dark as to advanced technology that's out there for folks that are hard of hearing. I would try to act as a model to them, and I would sometimes even give them the dialogue to say to their manager or their supervisor, to say, I need an accommodation. Because without that accommodation, I'm not going to be an effective worker in the job that I'm in. And I also developed very good relationships with those people. And I think I established a partnership, built a lot of trust. And in doing those things, I believe they listened more to me, felt a special connection, and ultimately did what they could to advocate for themselves. Everyone's different. We have extroverts out there, we have introverts. Some people respond more quickly, other people need a little pushing, and I was able to provide that and share that with them.
So why is it important for people to learn how to advocate for themselves?
Well, I think with any disability, if you don't advocate for yourself, you're going to be left behind. You know, this is technology. By the time I got this was already old. They were already developing something new and more sophisticated and digitalized. Cut that one. But if a person with a disability can't advocate for themselves, they're going to need someone to advocate for them. And maybe that's going to be someone who knows them, someone who lives with them, that lives with the disability, whatever it is. And on my own home phone, my wife will say, if you're leaving a message, speak clearly and slowly. And she's not saying that because my husband has hearing loss, but she's just kind of setting that up so the person providing the message is saying it slower and more clearly. And people adapt to that. I mean, if that's what's being asked of them, they're going to do that. Did I answer your question?
You did?
Margaret, we just have a couple more minutes.
Okay.
You wanna-
Yep, I was just gonna ask about some of the best practices.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so now I want to just ask you for some tips and techniques, things that help you communicate more effectively and help people communicate more effectively with you. So can you tell me what would be the ideal environment for you to communicate one-on-one with someone? If it was, it was an important topic, you really wanted to make sure everybody was on the same page.
Could you rephrase that question
Sure.
a bit?
Can you give me some idea of what an ideal communications environment would be for you on a one-on-one basis?
Working in an office or a private space that has good sound barriers, using my assisted listening device. I have the ability to read lips sometimes when I maybe miss something what the person has actually said. Being able to advocate for myself, just like I would want the consumer who's in to be able to advocate for themselves. Just by having the appropriate accommodations, I think, has made me as successful as I can be at this point in my career.
Okay. Have you worked with either mental health or social services professionals related to your hearing loss?
I have a great audiologist, and I have a great otolaryngologist, a doctor of hearing, and between the two of them, they have been so supportive of me. At one point, I was offered a job by a hearing aid company to advocate their brand of hearing aids. The ability I have, I'm not deaf. I can't hear perfectly, but I can adapt with the right accommodations. But having support people around you that understand your situation makes a world of difference. And between my audiologist, she's written letters to my superiors about my hearing loss to help me get accommodations. So if you have people on your side, medical people that understand your hearing loss, they can help advocate for you as well. My audiologist is so bright and knows so much about technology. So I rely on those folks to help me obtain the appropriate technology as it advances. And every time I see my audiologist, I will say, is there anything out there newer than this? And I'll be told, no, this is still the best out there. But you also have to be very aware of technology advancing. It advances in computers, it advances in making cars, but it also advances related to a hearing loss or deafness.
Okay.
One last question, Margaret?
Yes.
I just looked at my yodel audiologist for a while.
Yeah, I have to go. What are some characteristics of a poor office environment
For a person who's,
with hearing
Yeah.
loss? Right.
well, certainly people working in cubicles.
Could you start that? Margaret, have him start that out.
Some of the more difficult hearing environments might be. It's not mine. There's a phone. Someone's phone is going on.
Oh, okay. I can't hear it.
It's Peter. It's not mine.
Peter.
These are.
So the question is, what are some things that make an environment difficult for someone with hearing loss to communicate?
Well, if you're working in an open
Well,
space,
Margaret, have him start out
With the question.
with the question.
Oh, can
That's
you
what- that was my
paraphrase
point.
like some of the things that make it difficult to hear well? You know, maybe start with something like that.
certainly one big thing that really affects hearing is a fan. Or a different kind of machine that might be operating. Everybody else can hear fine, but anyone who's got a hearing loss will try to sit away from the fan. Being in an open office, not having basically a roof over your office, or being in an actual closed-door office, that is a big burden for someone who is hearing impaired. Not having an amplified phone, not having people that you're working with understand your hearing loss, therefore they shy away from you. Oh, well, I don't know what's wrong with him. Every time I talk to him, he answers me with the wrong answer. What's wrong with him? So you need to be around people that support your disability, but primarily the fan or any other kind of machine that is operating. Someone might have a heater in the winter oscillating in a cubicle next to you. That person in the next office or cubicle on the phone, that's a real detriment. Yeah, a deaf and hard of hearing person really needs to be in a very quiet space to be effective in their job, in my opinion.
How important is lighting?
Lighting, for me, is not an issue. It may be for other people that might have some hearing loss and also issues with sight. But lighting has never really affected me.
Okay.
Okay.
So can I do one last?
One last.
Okay.
One
Is
last.
there anything else about hearing loss that you would like people to know?
Well, we've talked about accommodations. We've talked about my hearing loss. We've talked about working in not good work environments. I think the biggest thing that needs to come out of this is the hard of hearing person has to be able to advocate for themselves. I don't know how to say that more emphatically, but had I not advocated myself, I'd still be back at square one. And you also have to be around people that know you well and will help you advocate. And in doing so, that will bring you from square one to square 10. but it's very, very important to learn how to advocate for yourself.
Okay,
That
perfect.
was good, except for he was looking way down for most of it. It was different than the whole other rest of the interview.
Okay.
I don't know if that matters to you or not. It's just,
But would you mind repeating it one more time?
it was
Okay.
kind of.
They loved what you said, but you were looking down?
I was. I didn't know you were asking me the question.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a great answer.
It was a great answer.
Okay.
So you were talking about the importance of self-advocacy.
Yes, it's so important.
Okay, so can you say self-advocacy is so important instead of it?
Self-advocacy is so important. It's the primary thing anyone who has a hearing loss must do. And if they're shy about it or uncomfortable about it, hopefully there's someone around them that knows them well that can advocate for them. But without advocating for oneself, it's going to be a very difficult road to move forward, and certainly would impact a person in a job. And the other very, very important part is to ask for accommodations in the workplace. Very vital to a person's success.
Okay,
Okay.
great.